Okay, for many of you who've been following my channel all these years, you know I've mentioned the skiver every so often when I'm talking about working with leather. And this is an industrial piece of equipment. What it does is it takes your leather and it thins the selvage or the seam allowance down so you can sew it with you can sew that leather with a domestic sewing machine. Now, this is it comes with an industrial table and an industrial motor attached. So you want to make sure you have room in your home just for this. So when you're done, when you run the leather through, it will skive it. You see the lighter part here? It shaved that leather to make it thinner. So when you fold the leather over, see, you have a very flat seam. Unlike if you didn't skive it and you fold it over, you will have, see how thick that is? Very unprofessional. So if you want to venture into leather and use your domestic sewing machine, you can. But like I say all the time, you have to have the right tools to be successful. Okay? And it takes years to practice sewing with leather and everything. And then your seam allowance, like I said, is thinned down because you want to make sure you can be able to sew that with your domestic sewing machine. If it's too thick, it won't work. So let me give you a demonstration of how this works. Okay, so here's a piece of leather that has not been skived yet. Now there are setups to learn about with using a skiver, and there's other videos on YouTube that will teach you that. I'm just showing you the tools that I use to have success with using a home sewing machine. So when you press on the foot pedal, it's going to start the machine. This here is a bell knife. It's very, very sharp. This is your presser foot right here. When you lower the presser foot, and you have adjustments up here on how high to lower the presser foot for the height or how much lower you want it. So what that does is when it goes under here, it feeds the leather. There's a roller under here also. Let me show you. So I'm going to feed this leather. And you can see how it thinned the leather out. So now, as I showed you earlier, when you fold it, you have a very nice thin crease. And when you sew it, it's thinner. So your domestic sewing machine can go through this. I'm going to do the other side and show you again. So you see the difference? Here's where it was skived and here where it was not skived. So now I'm going to skive it again on the other side. There we go. See? There you go. Alright, so let's talk about the setup. Right now, I'm using my Baby Lock Elissimo. This is a combination sewing and embroidery machine. I have attached to my machine a roller foot. What you have to do when you use this roller foot is to be sure that your needle position is all the way to the left. Okay? And even though it's all the way to the left, it's still not super close to the wheel like an industrial machine would. But this still works for this domestic machine. This roller foot you can purchase from your Baby Lock dealer. I would like to repeat what I just said. This roller foot you can purchase from your Baby Lock dealer. So get in your car and drive, yes, drive my friends, to your nearest Baby Lock dealer where you purchased your Baby Lock machine and get one of these roller feet if you want to use leather or even vinyl. This will work great for vinyl. Okay? Now, the next thing is you want a seam allowance. Well, when you're sewing professionally, with vinyl or leather, you always use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So since the needle is all the way over to the left, you put your seam allowance there, your seam gauge that is, and you measure from there over, and it's a 1/2 inch. And then you put a piece of masking tape there. Now I'm going to sew 2 pieces of that skived leather together for you so you can see. Now for the needle, I am using a leather size 18. I'm using top stitch thread and standard construction thread in the bobbin. The construction thread in the bobbin is dual duty. The top stitch thread that I'm using is a Madeira top stitch thread. for domestic machines. Okay? You can also use Coats dual duty heavy top stitch thread. And then my stitch length, let's see. The highest you can go on this machine is 5.0. Right now I have my tension at 5.4. We will see if the tension at 5.4 is tight enough. If not, we'll have to tighten it up. Then we have a width of 0, which means because the needle position is all the way over to the left. It's a straight stitch. See where that needle position is? See where the thread all the way over to the left. So let's give it a test sew and see. Okay, here's the setup. The setup again is the roller foot, which you can get from your Baby Lock dealer. I want to repeat that again because there's a lot of people who are going to write comments and say, where do you get that? Where do you get that? You buy this roller foot from your Baby Lock dealer. So get in your car and drive down to your Baby Lock dealer and tell them you want a roller foot for your model machine, and they'll order you one if they don't have it in stock. Okay? All right. So next, you need a seam allowance. So the seam allowance that I use and that all professionals use when they're doing leather sewing is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So you want to measure from the needle to the 1/2 inch seam allowance on your seam gauge and put your blue tape onto your bed of your machine. Speaking of needle, the needle has to be in the left needle position, all the way to the left needle position. If you try to sew with the needle to the right position, it's going to be too far away from the roller foot, and the leather is just going to keep popping up and down for you. In all honesty, an industrial machine, the needle is closer to this roller foot. This roller foot does not have an adjustment to move it closer. This is as close as it'll get. So we make it do, and it does work. And the needle I'm using is a size 18 leather needle. Now, the size of needle is dependent upon the density of your leather. As you can see, we're going to be sewing 2 pieces of leather together. This is an upholstery weight leather, and I skived it as I showed you in my previous video. Now I'm going to lift, and I'm going to lower this. And that doesn't look like a full 1/2 inch seam allowance to me. So let me lower my needle and see. Let me see if that's a 1/2 inch completely. No, I'm a little shy. So let me lift and reposition this tape. I'm going to reposition the tape, and that should be right there. Let me see. No, it was correct. Now, how did I mess that up? See, I'm making mistakes to show you guys that everyone makes a mistake. You just have to double check. Now, remember what they teach you in sewing? Measure twice, cut once? There, that should do it. Now let's see. Yeah, that's good. Okay, that's good enough. All right, so let's get this going. Let's get that thread out of here. And let's sew this. I'm going to put my needle down first, then put my foot down, and then I'm going to sew this. This is just a sample now, remember. And you want to sew slow. If you have a speed control on your machine, knock it down all the way to the slowest. You do not want to sew fast with leather on a domestic sewing machine. I also shut off the automatic presser foot lift. So I don't want this going up and down every time I stop. I want this roller foot to stay down on my leather. Look how nice that feeds. And you hear how quiet it feeds? I know when I post on the Baby Lock group, everybody's always saying, "What machine do you use? What machine do you use? What leather? What needle? What blah?" You know, guys, I'm going to tell you something. It takes years to perfect working with leather, because you just don't sew it together like you do vinyl and everything. There's a lot of prepping, a lot of finishing. There's a lot to do with working with leather. So when you see someone like me working with leather, you know that I've spent a lot of time studying and paying a lot of money to learn. So when I teach you something, pay attention, take notes, because I paid a lot of money to learn this myself. All right, so what you do when you are done sewing, you would go to the back, you would split this open. You can either top stitch it or you can glue it down. Okay? Now, I want to show you the seam. Here's the top thread. Look how beautiful that stitching is. You see that? Now you want to see the bottom? Here's the bottom. Look how beautiful that is. There are no skipped stitches. So I hope this helped answer your questions on basic sewing with leather. Like I said, there's a lot to learn. You're going to need to invest your money and take some college classes that teach leather. I know there's a leather class in San Francisco. A lady teaches leather. She used to work for Hermes handbags, which was the most expensive bags in the world. They are. And you could take classes from her. So if you're really serious about learning and you've got some bucks that you want to invest in education, do it. Do it if you want perfection, okay? And you always will still learn along the way. So, like I said, I hope this helped you. I hope this showed you, because every time I post a picture or a video of one of my bags, no one ever sees the other videos I did, so I want to make sure you see this to understand how simple it is to sew on a domestic machine once you follow the setups and the steps. And you just be cautious and careful. That's it. All right? I hope this helps. I know it helped you all. I know it did. So have fun and practice. Practice, practice, practice. And never sew right away on the real thing. Do scrap tests first. Okay? Invest in your tools and they will not let you down. Invest in your education and you'll know how to do it. You will know how to do it when you invest in your education, and when you invest in the proper tools, they will never let you down. Okay? Thanks everybody. Take care. Till my next video. Have a good time sewing and learning and practicing and being successful. Remember what sewing teaches you. Sewing teaches you how to be independent and self-sufficient. Okay? All right. Bye now.